Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa mawalah. In Surah Al-Hujurat, Surah number 49, in Ayah 6, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who have believed, in ja'akum fasiqun fatabayyanu. When a transgressor comes to you with a news, investigate. An tusibu qawman bijahara, so that you do not wrong or harm someone out of ignorance. فَتُصْبِحُ عَلَى مَا فَعَلْتُمْ نَادِمِينَ, and you become, out of what you have done, very regretful. Now, subhanallah, we always, of course, this surah Al-Hujurat, subhanallah, he has quite the structures for a social construct, subhanallah, which is designed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on how to have a perfect social code when it comes to the morals and ethics and principles for a socially designed by the divine himself subhanahu wa ta'ala. And part of it is this. But it is, although it applies to social contexts, but it is also applicable to our personal reality. And that has to do with our own evil self. Whenever thoughts come across our mind about any ideas that come to us from our evil self, we use the exact same instructions from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is to investigate, to look into what those thoughts are going to bring about as results or consequences. And this is why, subhanallah, as what we mentioned about our evil self or the righteous self or the blaming self, this is all happening in that space of our own thoughts and spiritual realm, and the world of our thoughts and intellectual arena, subhanallah. More often than not, we do not investigate. We do not sift through our thoughts, but we give them green light every time they come knocking. And every time they are about to come out in the form of either our statements or our behavior, green light, without accountability, without investigation, without running any inquiries as to how this thought is going to be processed, whether that is through the channel of our statements or the actions of our limbs. And it could very well bring quite the ramifications and consequences. And a lot of times our evil self justifies it by many justifications or some reasoning, when in fact we know that it is the wrong path to take. Yet just the mere justification given, it gives it solidifies the path to be taken. And this is, subhanallah, when you find that cognitive dissonance, we know exactly what is right and wrong to do, and yet just because of the evil self-justification, we can go with that reasoning. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, don't take that route, because you may very well harm your own self at the end of the day, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا ظَلَمْنَاهُمْ, we have not wronged them, وَلَكِنْ كَانُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ يَظْلِمُونَ, that the people are the ones that have always wronged themselves all along. They've been given exactly at any given time or place or circumstance, you have a guidance right there next to you to fall back and resort to, and use it as a reference point and as a blueprint and as a roadmap for your actions and statements by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as a way for Allah to honor you. And you dismiss all of that and you go with the evil self suggestions and justifications, subhanallah. And whether that is that would involve harming and wronging other people, or harming our own selves with our own moral compass, or with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nonetheless, we're the one to pay the price. Because when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke about the reality of having our deeds called for accountability and for our deeds to be weighed in scale, at the end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَمَنْ ثَقُلَتْ مَوَازِينُهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. Those whose scales are heavy with good deeds, those are the successful ones. وَمَنْ خَفَّتْ مَوَازِينُهُ. As for those whose deeds are going to be light in regards to their good deeds, versus their sins are heavy and their good deeds are light, فَأُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ خَسِرُوا أَنفُسَهُم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, these are the ones who really would have lost themselves. And the self here is the one that will be held accountable, regardless of how the sins are going to go, or the hasanat are going to go in your favor or against it. The self is the one that is subject to either being rewarded or punished. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, so don't take that route, because at the end you're going to come back, and because of what you have done, be in that situation of regret and sorrow. And unfortunately, if we don't take it upon ourselves to hold ourselves accountable in going into this space and be critical of our own selves, and make sure that every step of the way we look at our statements and our actions, whether they are going to fall at the end when they bring about deeds, whether those deeds are going to be in the scale of our good deeds or the scale of our bad deeds. And this is why Al-Hasan al-Basri was, subhanallah, so he was very meticulous about his statements. And he has many teachers, rather students, and they usually would say, often than not, we would have to prompt you to teach us. He says, because most times I'm sitting with myself and looking into my statements and whatever I was going to say, whether it's going to go on the scale of my good deeds or bad deeds, and I found most of what I was going to say is not going to be of benefit to me. That's why I would withhold talking. Not that I'm trying to be stingy with the knowledge to give, but rather because I look into whether it's going to work for me. And this is why self-accountability to this extent is what would make you disciplined. Instead of patting yourself over the shoulder over every single thought and action and statement made, and even when it comes off wrong, we think that by justifying the wrong is going to make the wrong right. It never works that way. The wrong is always going to stay wrong. And what goes in our scale of bad deeds is going to go on the scale of bad deeds. And what's going to go on the scale of our good deeds are going to go on a scale of our good deeds based on our intentionality. And this is why when the Prophet ﷺ spoke about all of our deeds are going to be rewarded based on the intention attached to them, well, we would better look into the intention. Because the intention, if it is for the sake of having or looking forward to the reward from Allah, then it is a good intention. And it is, if we are mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when it comes to all of our actions and statements, then that's when we become in charge and intentional about our statements and our actions, and make sure that they don't go except in our favor. And this is how self-accountability and self-purification and proactively be in charge of your own actions is the most rewarding reality to be felicitous and joyful and happy in this life, let alone in the next. Yeah, because when Umar ibn al-Khattab says, hold yourself accountable before it is done for you, it falls in this mindful and intentional discipline to work towards. And a lot of times we fall into the narrative of justification just because everybody's justifying the wrong, and then we think that by taking that route is going to make the wrong right. No, hold yourself accountable based on the scale of what is right and what is wrong, and who decides the right and wrong, and the path of righteousness and wickedness. Allah does. Prophet ﷺ left you and I the blueprint for that. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us amongst those who, when they heard the speech, they follow the best of it. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin.